When a narcissist sees strength in you, they do not celebrate it, they fear it. They are not inspired by your clarity, they are disturbed by it. Because what they cannot control, they must either disarm or destroy. To understand this, we must look not only at the narcissist, but also at the structure of your strength. True strength is not volume, it is not argument, it is not shouting to be heard, it is calm, it is rooted. It is the ability to stay unmoved when someone else is spinning in chaos. This is what unsettles them most. At first, they may admire you, even praise your stability. But admiration soon turns into discomfort. Because when someone needs to control others to feel secure, they cannot tolerate someone who is already in control of themselves. And so, they shift. They will challenge your certainty, mock your calmness, misinterpret your boundaries as selfishness. They will try to make you responsible for their emotions, for their emptiness, for their chaos. And when that does not work, they withdraw their approval, hoping you will come chasing it. But if your strength is genuine, you will not chase. And then comes the final strategy. They question your value. They attempt to plant doubt. They try to confuse what is truth and what is illusion, because a confused mind is easy to guide. But a still mind, disciplined, centered, awake, that mind is unshakable. So what do? You do not fight. You do not argue to prove your worth. You do not bend to gain favor. You remain rooted, clear, unavailable to manipulation. Not out of pride, but out of discipline, out of knowing that someone else's discomfort is not your problem to solve. You continue walking because strength, real strength, is not proven in how loudly you speak, but in how calmly you walk away. And a narcissist cannot follow you there. They mirror strength at first, but eventually aim to weaken its roots. This is something subtle, something that doesn't announce itself with noise, but creeps in like a quiet shadow. In the beginning, when a narcissist sees strength in you, they don't push against it directly. No, direct confrontation is not their way. They mirror it, reflect it back to you like a polished surface. They want you to believe that they are just like you, calm, balanced, secure. They wear strength like a mask, not because they possess it, but because they need your trust before they can dismantle it. At first, it feels like resonance, like compatibility, as if someone finally understands your stillness. They echo your values, your discipline, your clarity, not because they live by them, but because they study them. They study you, and this is the beginning of the unraveling, though you don't see it yet. You think they get it, they see the world as I do, but what's really happening is imitation. Not connection, imitation. And there's always a gap between what is real and what is performed. The performance cannot last. It never does. Soon the shift begins, gradual, barely noticeable. Where once they echoed your strength, now they start to chip at it. Light comments at first, sarcasm disguised as humor, questions that poke at your decisions. Are you sure that's the best idea? You always think you're right. You don't have to be so serious all the time. It doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like a suggestion, a concern. But if you listen carefully, the tone has changed. The intention is no longer to reflect your strength. It's to question it. This is not random, it's precise, because the moment they realize your strength is not just a posture, but something internal, something lived, they know they cannot control it. And so, the objective changes, no longer mirror it, but break it. The way they do this is not loud. It's slow, strategic. They don't aim at the obvious, they go for the roots, they plant seeds of doubt. Not in one conversation, but over time. seeds that make you second guess your intuition, seeds that make you wonder if your boundaries are too rigid, seeds that make you feel guilty for being strong, and if you are not watching carefully, if you are not steady within yourself, those seeds begin to grow, because no strength is invincible when it is isolated. No mind is unshakable without awareness. This is why you must be vigilant, not paranoid, not defensive, but awake. You must recognize the moment when admiration turns into erosion, when the one who once praised your clarity now seems irritated by it, when they no longer listen but interrupt, when they no longer value your quiet but call it cold, because the strongest people are not immune to doubt, especially when it's wrapped in false intimacy. Narcissists do not want partners, they want mirrors. As long as you reflect what they like, they feel in control. But when your strength begins to threaten that illusion, when you stop agreeing just to keep peace, when you stop reacting to their moods, when you remain steady in your silence, that's when they begin to panic, not outwardly, but internally. They sense the loss of grip, and rather than face themselves, they turn on you. They will say you've changed, that you've become distant, that you've lost yourself, but what they're really saying is, I can no longer control you, and that is not something they can tolerate. So they double down, they press harder. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's withdrawal, maybe they try to make you feel like you are the narcissist, now cold, disconnected, uncaring. This is projection, not truth. The irony is that your strength never changed. What changed was their ability to mimic it, to mold themselves around it. That ability failed because false strength always fails when confronted with the real thing. But this moment, this collapse of illusion, is where your strength is truly tested, because it is tempting to soften yourself to ease their discomfort. It is tempting to compromise clarity for harmony, to make your truth smaller just to stop the pushback. Don't. This is the moment you hold the line, not with anger, not with pride, but with presence, with stillness, with that quiet knowing that the strongest tree does not bend to every gust of wind. It simply endures. Let them call it cold. Let them call it distance. Let them call it what they need to call it to preserve their narrative. You don't owe your strength to anyone's comfort, and when you realize that deeply, without resentment, you become untouchable. That's when they know they've lost control, and that is the moment you are finally free. Strength disrupts control. This is something many people don't immediately realize, because strength, real strength, doesn't walk into a room shouting, demanding attention, or taking up space for the sake of being seen. It's quiet, composed. It holds itself in place without needing permission. And for someone like a narcissist, who survives on maintaining control over people's thoughts, feelings, and actions, that quiet, grounded presence is like static to their system. Control is what they rely on. It's the air they breathe, whether it's through praise, manipulation, guilt, or fear. It's always about control. Not connection, not mutual respect, not balance. And so, when someone walks into their world who is not looking for validation, who is not easily swayed by approval or rejection, someone who simply stands on their own, without neediness, without performance, they don't know what to do with that. Because here's the truth. Control only works when there's a lack of clarity in the other person. Narcissists prey on uncertainty, on insecurity, on the little spaces where someone questions their own worth. That's the doorway they walk through. That's how they begin to pull the strings slowly, subtly. But when someone is centered, when you walk in with quiet awareness of who you are, and you don't need anyone to echo it back for you to believe it, you've just closed that doorway. You've just disrupted their entire strategy. Now, they don't always react right away. Sometimes they still try. Maybe they test you, they throw a little bait, a passive-aggressive comment, a compliment laced with control. They want to see if they can still find a lever, a button, something inside you they can pull to shift your behavior. But when they see that you're not moved, not cold, not defensive, just unmoved, there's an internal alarm that goes off for them. They realize they don't have the same access, and that's when things start to shift. Because when a narcissist cannot control you, they often try to control how others see you. If they can't shift your internal state, they'll attempt to damage your external one. They'll plant stories, raise doubts, or turn the narrative so they're still at the center, even if it's as a victim of your supposed selfishness or ego. But you don't flinch. And that's what makes it even worse for them. They rely on reaction. They feed on it. They study it. And when you give them nothing to grab onto, no guilt, no justification, no chaos, just calm, clear boundaries, it's unsettling. It's foreign because most people break a little when they're pushed. Most people bend, even if only slightly, to avoid conflict or restore peace. But when you don't bend, not out of stubbornness but out of certainty, they lose their grip. You become a mirror they can't distort. And here's the deeper truth. The moment you stepped into your strength, the moment you stopped explaining yourself, overgiving, shrinking to keep things smooth, you took back the power they needed to feel secure. You didn't threaten them with anger. You threatened them with clarity. This is why so many strong people find themselves being subtly attacked, criticized, or diminished in relationships with narcissists. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because they're doing something right, because they're not afraid to take up space without controlling others, because they're rooted, and someone who is rooted is hard to move. That kind of presence forces everyone around you to either rise or retreat, and a narcissist, they don't want to rise. That would require self-reflection, humility, growth. So instead, they try to destabilize you. Not always obviously. Sometimes it's with concern, sometimes it's with charm, sometimes it's with silence, but it always comes down to this. How can I get you off balance? How can I reintroduce doubt where you've found clarity? But here's what you must remember. When your strength comes from a place of discipline, when you've done the quiet work of knowing yourself, setting boundaries, observing rather than reacting, it's not so easily shaken. You don't need to defend it. You don't need to explain it. You just live it. And when you live it, the need for control around you dissolves. Not because it gives up, but because it no longer has a place to land. So when they sense that you're not playing the game, that you're not here to be controlled, that you're not moved by praise or blame, that's when they feel the most threatened. Not because you attacked, not because you exposed them, but simply because you refused to hand over your sense of self. And that, more than anything else, is what ends the game.